Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your co-pilot into the universe of Chinese. We are going to continue. Yesterday we talked about 春光无限. So your springtime, you're blooming, you're at your prime time. It really feels like endless. It feels like there's no limit. Either there's no limit of your potentials, what you can do with your life, with your time, right? Which is kind of true when you were that young, or like that sense of you're still young, your life is still new at an early stage. If you want to make a change, make an effort, do it later. Right now is your party time. So that's the kind of 春光无限, the exuberance, the enjoyment of your spring. Now, we have the opposite. I kind of flip it. So instead of 春光无限, here we have 时间有限. Big concepts today, actually. And we're, connected by this 限 character at the end. Again, 限 means the limit. So yesterday we explained what is the limit. Like you can visually see that cliff you cannot really climb up or go over. That's your limit. You can go over. So we have 时间有限. Big concept coming up. 时 originally looks like this. Well, there are variations of how it was originally written, but I find this form probably make the most sense because we have the sun and we have the hand, right? A 3-finger hand symbol. And we have this almost like cactus looking structure, right? It's a plant standing above the ground. So as a farmer or peasant, back then in Chinese society, planting, like farming with your hand, manual labor, planting with the help with natural condition, the sun, right? That's the main activity. And that's the main measurement of your time. Because for time, the concept of time is not really, time is continuation, right? It's hard to market somehow, right? We have day and night, yes, it's an obvious change, but we also have seasons. So here, actually, it means like a continuous longer time span of working on something and then have the season pass and then you see the result, right? So there is a time lapse over there. So definitely here it describes during that time, that sun season with good sun lighting, right? You're supposed to work with your hand on your plant. So that's the sense of time. 间, okay. We have this ancient door. We talked about the ancient door before because it's the top portion of the ancient doors are heavily decorated, at least for rich families who can afford to have somebody customize, make them a very decorative door, upper panel, right? And then it open always like, instead of like contemporary door, right? You have one hinge on one side and you have a knob to open, and that's the contemporary door for most of us. Ancient door in China, it's like open 2 panels opening. And here in the middle, we have this moon looking structure, which now kind of look like a crescent, right? Crescent shape with a 1 dot in the middle, kind of energy source. That's my interpretation, even if the moon is reflective of sunlight. But back then, people didn't know. They thought that's their own lighting, right? It has its own energy source on that that's emitting that light that you see on Earth. Well, I guess back then, people doesn't know the Earth is a circle, a sphere either. Anyway, so this depicts, okay, you see your door, and then you see the moon outside your door. And what are you going to see from your side, the viewer, inside the door? What are you going to see? You're going to see a gap in between the door And because the gap in the daytime is so difficult to see a gap in between the door, right? But in the nighttime, when the lights are off and the moon is your only source of light, you are going to see a clear, almost like a laser beam of light casting of the moonlight through the door. At that moment, you are going to be more aware of this gap between the two doors. You're going to see the moonlight casting, beaming down the gap, right? So that's the sense of border. That's the sense of gapping between the doors that marks the concept of things are going to end. You are going to have an edge there between the doors or between things or spaces. So that becomes our concept of border. So what is time border? Okay, because time was continuation. We don't really, when we are counting time, back then, before we have calendars, we have iPhones, right? When the ancient people are experiencing a living time, right? It's a continuation. You don't see it. You have no grasp of the border of time, right? Once you can kind of manage your time by first set up a unit of time so that you can count it. You can convert the continuous variable, so to speak, continuous factor into a discrete. Like you can cut it, you can box it up, you have a chunks of time, right? So that's the sense of time. You cut it into buckets. So then you have day and night. You have each day, right? You turnover of each day, probably marked by sunrise time. And then you have each month, right? Marked by the moon time. And then you have each season marked by your farming time. So that's a unit of time. That's time with border, with brackets, and with it's cookie cutter form, uniform unit of time. So that's our sense of time. Okay, it's discrete time. And then in this expression is half has this, the meat sign there, like, and this is the hand gesture. So you have meat, that's a major half. Back in ancient time, you have meat. Imagine that, protein, not that easy to get back then. So, okay, you have limits. Time, border. So it's a time unit. You do have limits because we already boxed it up. There are limited time amount assigned to a certain time era. So limited time, 时间有限 is more a contemporary expression. It's not, the elegant looking sounding to me, ancient one, but it's a big concept of 时间, this time unit, and you do have a limit. Because yesterday we talked so optimistically about the springtime is lasting forever, no limit. So today we bring you to the reality of you do have a limit. Actually, most of the things in life are limited, right? So you have limited time. So that's the sense of, the unit of time is going to be limited. And I don't know if anybody ever checked out this hourglass, the old time marking thing. There are different time units in there, like how many minutes you want the sand to go down, right? So of course, like that's how big the size or how narrow the bottleneck over there will change the speed of sand going down, and eventually the unit of time in that hourglass, that's the sense of time is limited. Like you simply have limited amount of sand to mark your limited amount of time. All right, cash into the currency of thinking by just one word a day with me, Sophie. See you another day.